Tonight I'm going to present to you something that I figure is kind of an allegory that goes along with the Lenten season. It's part of the scouting program. It's called the Order of the Arrow. Recently, scouting has celebrated their 110th anniversary, and part of the motto, or the scout law, is to do our duty to God and country. One of those things that I do as far as country goes is serve youth in our country. I don't currently serve, and have never served in the military, but I do serve those that have served and do serve, working at the commissary, which is kind of a real important thing to me, having had relatives that have served and whatnot. It's also, I feel, a good way to give back to those who give to us. And it kind of goes along with the theme of the season also, and what I'm going to talk about tonight. The Order of the Arrow was founded in 1915 at a summer camp called Treasure Island by a man by the name of Ear Goodman. And he was looking for a way to recognize those people who were giving service to others. And there are several stories that I can give, but those aren't the important thing I want to talk about. Our traditions come from the Lenape, which is a part of the Delaware tribal system. Oddly enough, the legend that we give scouts when they go through the ceremony talks about Chingachgook, the chief of the Delaware, or the Lenape, I should say, looking for people to go warn incoming invaders into their hunting grounds and whatnot. And the only person he could find was his own son, who was willing to go out and serve not only his home village, but the other villages to give them warning. And along the way, they do find others that go along and help to warn other villages and to ward off the invaders into their land. So a lot of our stuff that we do is based on that. Now our ceremony has, well, the Order of the Arrow has three different parts. There are three different honors in the Order of the Arrow. The first one is represented just by the arrow, and that's what everybody goes through. It's the ordeal membership, and everybody has that in common. After 10 months, well, it used to be 10 months, it's now 6 months, you can go through and take upon yourself the Brotherhood, what gives you a further meaning of the Order of the Arrow, and that's represented by the two bars on the sash. The triangle at the center represents the vigil, and that is something that is brought upon you by members of the lodge. So in the beginning, it's people who are members of your troop that are voting you in, you taking upon yourself the Brotherhood, and then the lodge feeling that you're deserving bestows upon you the vigil. Each one of those different honors has a different ceremony that they go through, and the tests that you do are intensified or changed slightly. And I think it's the tests that kind of represent the season as well, and the allegory part of things, just as well as the legend that is given us. The four tests that every scout goes through when they go to the Order of the Arrow is to have a night away from others, a day of silence, working while in that silence, so sometimes that's hard to do even in real life, working without talking to other people, and a day of going through without eating a whole lot. So we don't necessarily fast, but it is a form of fasting because we're all used to eating regular good-sized meals, whereas now you're getting just a little bit of food. Now each of these tests have different reasons. The lack of food, or the scant food, is to show a sense of being able to withdraw from what you normally have. The day of work is because we are a service organization. That's our main goal, is to serve in life. But also in this organization, we do service for our camps, for our councils. It's just a kind of an intensification of that, doing our good turn daily. The night apart kind of gives us an opportunity to set apart ourselves and become more self-reliant as a person. It's not always the easiest thing to do, and but it gives us an opportunity to try that and realize that we can do things on our own. And then that day of silence. Sometimes we spend too much time in life just talking, and we need to have that inner reflection. And even in the ceremony it says that hours spent in thoughtful silence are worth more than days and days of talking. And I do believe that's an important thing. We're going to skip to the vigil. One of the things about the vigil is that you kind of do all that at one time as well. You are spending a night by yourself, but you're tending a fire. You are spending the night in silence, and the only voices you hear are your inner voice and, on a couple occasions, voices from the outside telling you why you're here, and to give that introspection to yourself of why you're here, and maybe ask God, why do I deserve this? When we go back to the Brotherhood, which is the second ceremony that you go through if you take it upon yourself, a couple of things that we do is, like I said, intensifications of other things. But the two that strike me the most, and I think are part of this season, and part of the why, Christ was given to us, is that we're set here to ease the burdens for our brothers. It's a time to reflect upon that. Whether it's in silent talk to ourselves, silent talk to God, Jesus, just talking with others even about why you're here and how we can best serve that, to ease the burdens off the shoulders of others. Christ eased the burdens of our sins off our shoulders. Another part is part of the ceremony is to put a piece of wood into the fire and then run our hand slowly through the fire. Now, the fire represents cheerfulness in a lot of communities or across the world, and in our organization of the Order of the Arrow. And in doing so, when we put that piece of wood in there, we're building upon the fire of cheerfulness, and running our hand is allowing us to suffer cheerfully for the sake of others, to build upon that fire of cheerfulness. Again, Christ did that for us. He suffered cheerfully and gave himself so that we could be better people, so that we could lift our sins away from us and ease that burden from us. Now, I'm not saying that as regular humans that we should go out and be crucified. There are other ways that we can lift the burdens off other people and ease and suffer cheerfully for them. And I'd like to give an example. In 2001, I went to a jamboree. It's one of the several that I've gone to, and I was staffing. I think staffing is a great experience, especially at a jamboree, when you go from literally ground zero and watch people come in and build up a city that basically doubles the population of the county that we were in. It's an amazing sight. But there's a lot of work that goes into it. This particular year, actually it was 2005, was the first jamboree after 9/11. We were on the top 10 watch list for the FBI for a terrorist attack. So there's a lot of stress put on that. You don't want to see unnecessary injury. We had a couple drills that we did throughout the week. One actually came up with a funny ending to us, but that's a story for a different time. A lot of security was put on the jamboree when you could bring in outside companies to set up things for you or leave things behind, but you had to be done prior to the scouts getting there. So there was a lot of pressure to get these people in, make sure that their loads were secured and not tampered with, but also to get things done in an orderly manner. One group in our sub-camp had ordered a circus tent to use as a dining hall. They were about a troop and a half of boys. So you're talking 40 to 60 boys, somewhere in there. And the vendor that they'd hired to do this had run out of time because they had other places, their units that they were setting up tents for. But they did leave behind detailed instructions on how to set up this circus tent. So as the boys get there and things are happening, and it is chaos beyond chaos. There's confusion, there's traffic, there's everything going on, and everybody's running probably on adrenaline. Having been a youth participant at a jamboree, you're running on adrenaline. The group from Alaska was setting up this circus tent, and they were doing a fairly good job, and it got to the time to raise the center pole. And they had boys trying to push the center pole that was on a wheel into position. And they couldn't. It was just too heavy or whatever, rough ground. There's probably a lot of variety of things that caused them to not be able to push this in position. So the adults came over and they took over. They had pushed the center wheel into position, and it had inadvertently touched a power line. The boys from the troop came running up, yelling for medics. I was probably one of the first people that had gone down to the scene, and this is one of those instances where scouting has saved my life through first aid training and whatnot. I noticed that this was not a scene that you could rush into to give help. The unfortunate thing is that there were now 4 adults laying there being electrocuted to death. And there was no way anybody could get in there. It took a good 30 to 45 minutes before people could get in and turn off the electricity. Now, I know what I saw, and I know that I can handle a situation and understand what needs to go on, but it's the outpouring afterwards that is probably the more important part of the story. It's not all bad news. No boys were killed in this, which is a miracle in itself, considering that it was boys originally pushing the center pole into position. You know, and waste of life is still a waste of life. But on one hand, I thank God that it wasn't boys, and it has that these kids had a chance to grow up and become men. I am saddened by the loss of life that happened. Now, like I said, it's not all bad. Only 2 boys from the Jamboree troop went home. So that means a lot stayed. There were adults from Alaska in our subcamp that were working the staff that were willing to no longer be subcamp staff, but go and be a part of their experience and to be there for them, somebody from home that they could talk to. But we also had a Chaplaincy Corps that consisted of about 4 chaplains from various faiths, from Lutheran, Catholic. I think we had a Salvation Army person there that particular Jamboree. This is where the lifting the burdens and the suffering cheerfully for the sake of others comes in. They spent the entire Jamboree going from morning until night. They would grab a quick breakfast and go meet with the boys and tend to their needs, and tend to the needs of any boys who needed them during the day. They would come home in the evening just before dinner, or just after dinner, maybe catching a little something. They spent the entire week at Jamboree doing this for these boys. Now, for me, I couldn't add to their misery. We were sharing a chaplaincy corps with the subcamp next to us. They were literally right across the road from us, their subcamp headquarters. But they were serving close to 6,000 scouts that needed them all. So for me, suffering cheerfully for the sake of others was not bothering them. They had enough on their plate. I didn't need to add to that. I was lucky I had my father there. If I needed somebody to talk to, he was there to listen, and vice versa. It affected us both greatly. And to this day, it's hard to talk about, but it gets easier. It's like any other death. But I think in the long run, we all need to learn how to ease the burdens from the shoulders of others, whether it's not telling our problems to somebody who's already listening to everybody else's, especially in times of crisis, kind of like we're looking at now. But it's going out and helping people. We all know somebody that needs help, whether it's somebody to talk to because they're locked in their house, secluded away because they can't go out, or maybe they need some groceries. We all have things that we can do to ease the burdens from others and to suffer cheerfully in our lives to help others, just as Christ would have us do. And I think that if anything, I've got Indian regalia up here, something that I've made. This has only strengthened my belief system, my religious spirit, and it's something that I believe strongly in. And to some it may seem sacrilegious. I don't. Part of my background is Native. It's not Northwest Coast, but that's the area that I've adopted. It's the area that I live in. So why not? I'm not going to make claims that I'm a Native American, but that blood's there. And having studied that group of people, that's what they do. They serve their fellow man. They suffer cheerfully when necessary for the sake of others, because family is important, friends are important, community is important. So I hope that we all continue on that path and that we take a lesson from this. I'd be more than happy to talk about this. I'd be more than happy to invite you to a ceremony. Even though I'm supposed to safeguard all those ceremony ideals, sometimes I think it's important that people see and understand that there's more to life than just me. It's about others. It's about, as our admonition in the Ordinary says, to love one another. And let's do exactly that. Let's love one another. Let us ease the burdens from each other's shoulders when we need it. And I'd like to thank you for your time tonight.